Chris Shansing with major breaking news this hour. The mayor of Atlanta just announced several big moves in the wake of enforcement suggesting that new video they just released shows the suspect did make a threatening move and police reacted. So let's explain how we got here. There have been protests throughout the day in Atlanta after cell phone video emerged of the deadly shooting of 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks. And we want to warn you, this video may be disturbing. Police say they were called to a Wendy's on a report of a man sleeping in his car and blocking other drivers. After they woke Brooks up, they say he failed the DUI test and then resisted arrest, getting into a scuffle with police, which continued for some time before he's seen on the video getting up and running from the officers. But the Georgia Bureau of Investigation came out just a short time ago to say the video doesn't tell the whole story, promising to release their own video. Well, just a few moments ago, they did. Take a look. It's surveillance video that picks up after the cell phone video ends with Brooks running from police. And it appears to show Brooks turning toward police and firing the taser. Police fire, and he drops to the ground. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms weighed in just a few minutes ago, calling for quick action against the officer involved.
While there may be debate as to whether this was an appropriate use of deadly force, I firmly believe that there is a clear distinction between what you can do and what you should do. I do not believe that this was a justified use of deadly force and have
Another nigga dead in Atlanta. Got shot at the Wendy's, fighting the cops. He grabbed the taser. He shot the taser at the cops, and the cop shot his ass dead. And now Atlanta is burning down the Wendy's or something where the dude which killed that. That's the first thing I woke up to. I can't even wake up good and come in the studio without this shit.
Floyd. Activists and protesters around the country have been rallying around the slogans, defund the police and abolish the police. And while that hasn't happened yet in our cities, it is happening on our TVs.
The popular TV show Cops officially canceled. The Paramount Network made the announcement today, just 4 days after the show was pulled from the schedule. This comes amid nationwide protests against police brutality and calls for police reform. The series has been on since 1989 and faced backlash for its depiction of law enforcement.
Okay, I think when people were asking for Cops to be canceled, this was not what they had in mind. You know what this is like? This is like when you make a wish with a genie, but you aren't specific enough. I wish I was in the NBA. No, not as a ref. LeBron, that's a travel. And you know, if you ask me, I can't even believe the Cops lasted this long. This is such a weird show. Who comes home from a long day at work and is like, I want to unwind, let me watch some broke, shirtless guys get their lives destroyed. It's the only way I can get some sleep. And although this might...
These people at the end of the block down here, they've been pumping music all night. They're out there singing fucking karaoke, 90s songs and shit. They cannot sing either. God damn. I keep forgetting this isn't touchscreen. I don't know what the fuck to watch or listen to, rather. Boozy, 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 yeah. What up, my dog? Yeah. What up, nigga? Yeah. What up, my dog? Yeah. What up, nigga? Got a late night one for you, Boozy. Okay, yeah. Cause I can't sleep, and I can't eat, but I just drink, and I just think, I need some smoke up in my lungs. I hit that studio and then I show some love, that art and education. We're banging through the night, yeah, this art and education. We're banging through the night and we give you entertainment. Put that shit in your sight so you can see me hype. Yeah, you can see me hype. And put that shit right in your sight so you can see me hype. Yeah, you can see me hype. We streaming all through the fucking night. Oh, let me get my little weed right. Pull out a nug, or maybe a bud. I crush it up. That's that we love. It ain't got no name, but that shit still stink. So let me think. Gotta catch my rank and build it up. Just move it. I'm soothing. I'm in the whip. I'm cruising. You getting beat up. That's bruising. And you losing, but I'm a winner and I'm a pimp. And I got my and back at my residence like yeah. Boozy. Yeah. Boozy. Yeah. Boozy. Yeah. Boozy. Yeah, that's Boozy. All through the night, yeah, that art and education. All through the night, and I'm put it in your sight. I'ma put it in your sight. All through the night is that art and education, that real entertainment. I'm streaming this shit all night. I'ma put that shit in your sight like.
At Cadillac, you have the option of shopping online and
I have the
in
option of
vehicle
skipping
where
these
available.
fucking commercials.
Cadillac, we have your back.
Okay, Cadillac. When the last time were you a popular maker, Cadillac? Nobody don't be like, ooh, gotta get that new Cadillac. That new lat with the diamond in the back. Black man. time Cadillac was a sought after vehicle? When it was a popular player. Even nowadays, when I see commercial, Cadillac don't even have a ass of fucking advertisement like that. The biggest advertisers now be seeing Chevy show their lineup all the time. Lexus will show their new lineup all the time. Motherfucking Jeep keep showing their lineup all the time. When the last time you seen a Cadillac commercial where they show all the lineups of their caddies, from their coupes to their sedans to their crossovers, their SUVs, trucks? Like, Caddy don't really be pumping like that. You know what I'm saying? Chrysler either. But Chrysler, they changed their name, or somebody brought Chrysler out. Like, car company's crazy now. Like, I've been a Chevy man. Heartbeat of America. You know what I'm saying? Love them Chevys. And right now, like, I got an older model, but the Chevy Equinox, man, that's a popular ass fucking vehicle, yo. Them shits is everywhere. Everywhere you go, like, motherfuckers be driving them shits. And Jeep is hella popular. Even the Kia commercials. But like Cadillac, what happened to you, Cadillac? You fell off on your marketing, you fell off on your branding and advertising, and or is it the quality of your vehicles? Even though it's a American company, like, they do Cadillac. Oh, really, Caddy? Even Lincoln hired what's the actor's name who was in all the Lincoln commercials? The real cool, smooth white dude. Lincoln stepped up their advertisement campaign by hiring him, getting a familiar actor to do their fucking campaigns for him. Oh yeah. That's why I don't mind Chevys, yo. Chevys are good vehicles, and they're known for really good trucks. Ford and Chevrolet are known for their trucks, their durability. GMC, which is another American company, makes most of the fucking engines for those things anyway. Matthew McConaughey. And you see what I'm saying? And that's how it's like. And the Lincoln commercials were cool. And Matthew was driving all their shit. He was in the fucking sedan whipping that shit. Then they had him in the commercial in the big ass Navigator whipping that shit. You know what I'm saying? When the last time Cadillac did something like that for their branding, for their marketing? Like, Cadillac don't even be trying to entice newer, younger buyers or middle-aged buyers into getting their cars no more. But the Hyundais, the Toyotas, the Jeeps, the Chevys, the Lincolns, they commercials stay popping. Motherfuckers don't like, I don't know, Cadillac is, are they trying to be more exclusive again? Because for a while they were putting out, like, economy cars. I forgot that one Cadillac that was cheap as hell. That shit looked like a fucking Camry. It just had a Cadillac logo on it. And their Escalades did pretty well for a while, but maybe they're just trying to change the demographics that they're targeting for new sales instead of used sales or something like that. I don't know. I don't own a big ass motor corporation, so I don't know what the fuck their strategies are. I know I'm in the market for a new car. Well, I don't know. I keep thinking like my cars ain't bad. Like, they're old, but they still run. They still work. There's like, I just want something new. I ain't gonna lie, yo. You know where I want a new car? Or a newer car? Just for the technology and that shit. And that's it, yo. Like, my car is mechanically sound. It's just old. It doesn't have, like, the technology in it. The built-in GPS in the dashboard. The satellite connections, or, you know, the Bluetooth and phone connections. Like, my vehicles don't have that. My shit's got old radios with CD players on that shit. And I have to use my phone for my GPS and shit like that. But all of that technology is integrated into, like, even the lowest entry level of a model. Like, the base levels sometimes have that technology now. So I was like, shit, I just want the technology in my car too. I want to be able to sync my phone to my vehicle so I can listen to the music on my phone instead of trying to listen to corny ass radio or swap out compact disc and from the CD changer. The Wranglers. I was actually looking at the Grand Jeep Cherokee, but yo, the highest model Cherokee, yo, man, I seen one of these shits. Boy, that shit was like $80,000. I ain't know a Jeep can cost that much. But it's luxury. That shit was like close to like the G series of the fucking Jeep wagon, the Jeep trucks, yo, them G series. That shit was kind of like in that price range, $80,000-$90,000 for a Jeep. I was like, God damn. The 2020 Jeep Wrangler Latitude Limited .2 or some crazy shit, man. They want so much bread for that shit. But even just a standard like Jeep Wrangler with the upgraded package, like the leather interior, the chrome on the outside, that little shit like that, even a used one, them shit, they motherfuckers still want like 18 grand for them shit, 17, 18 grand with decent mileage on it. I was looking, like, honestly, like, when I search cars, I don't search anything past 2015. I don't need nothing that fucking new. You know what I'm saying? If I can get something from, like, 2000, anywhere from 2010 to 2015, something in that year bracket with, like, some decent miles for about 10 grand, that's what I'm gonna jump on. And I've never had a, like I said, I've only had, like, sedans, yo. This is the first SUV I've ever owned, is this Chevy Equinox. I've never had any other SUV. But once again, I got it because I'm really into my art. My paintings are bigger. When I move shit around, it won't fit in no fucking car. Even if you do have a sedan, it's like, I can't move some of my art, yo. Gotta have something bigger. It's like, fuck, I gotta buy an SUV. That's the only reason I bought that shit. It's like now I'm so used to it, and it is a utility vehicle. I do utilize the cargo space in my SUV. I had to go drop the painting of the baby off. It's gone. I had to go drop that baby painting off earlier today, and you know, it's convenient for me to have a larger vehicle. But now I just want something nicer, I think. Larger and nicer. I really, really, really want a Chevy Traverse, and it's basically the next size up from the Equinox, because it's the Chevy Trax, and then it's the Chevy Equinox, and then it's the Traverse, and then the Tahoe, and then the Suburban. I think that those are the sizes going up, and the Traverse isn't much different from the Equinox. Like I say, it's like a bulkier, longer version of the Equinox. But those aren't cheap either, yo. Like I can't find one of those motherfuckers in my price range. Yeah, you know, and I still I can't do the speed limit, bro. The speed limit don't make no sense to me. Like, in residential areas, if there is no traffic and there's not kids and shit playing around, like 40 feels like cruising speed to me. But most residential areas be like 25, 30 miles an hour for the speed limit. I'm like, bro, these streets are nice, smooth, wide. There's not a lot of traffic. You can do 40 coming down the street with no problem. 40, 45 miles an hour. On the highway, be like our standard speed up here is 65 miles an hour. On the highway, it's like, really? I do 65 on the highway, bro. That shit feel like I'm going slow as shit. Like, my cruising speed is 80. Swear to God, like 75 or 80 if I'm on the highway. If there's not no traffic in front of me, I cruise at 80. I get that bitch to 80 and literally poop, I pump the cruise, and that shit just seems like that's a decent speed to drive. I'm not doing 110 miles an hour or some crazy shit like that. It's just 80 miles an hour. But it's like I can't do the speed limit. So I ain't never had no sports car, like no Subaru, no Mustang or nothing like that. But that's why I just like cars too. Like, whip the hell out that shit, man, and get the fuck where I'm going. Yeah, the Trailblazer, yeah, that shit hot too. I seen that shit. After how long? They make that shit for like 10 years or 15 years or some shit. They make a Blazer. No, longer than that. I remember the first time back in the day when me and one of my homies hung out. That's what this motherfucker, cause I ain't had no will. This motherfucker come pick me up, and no, he ain't had no Blazer. They had the Bronco. We was in high school. His mom had the 2-door Bronco. He come through in that shit, yo. That shit was hot. Yeah, 40. That ain't, I mean, come on, man. 25, 30 mile an hour speed limit. Come on, bruh. That's kind of slow. For me, it feels slow. And then, too, I'm from the country. I'm from down south, man. We just got back roads and long empty highways, and there's not where I'm from, there is not the population is low, so there's not a lot of traffic. There's not like traffic jams and all kind of shit. You get where the fuck you going, get on the highway, and even our stretch, because for me to get home when I'm on the East Coast, so 95 take you through most of the East Coast states until you get further up north. But like parts of 95 are just faster. Like I say, the 95, the part of 95 up here, that shit is like 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour. The further you go down south, the speed limit goes up to like 70 miles an hour on the highway. And it's like, motherfucker, just drive faster. It's less traffic, less people on the road. You can just, we'll give you extra 5 miles an hour. And then I don't give a fuck. Like I say, man, I'm still do 80. I know y'all saying I can go 70 now, but I'm still gonna do 80, yo. I can't help that shit. That's how especially if I'm driving for a minute too. I said I gotta drive the highway getting to work. I work 27 miles away from where I live. I gotta drive 27 miles in one direction. I'm not doing 60 miles an hour to get there. Man, fuck that. I'm gonna hit this 80 and click that bitch in. Now we about to cruise. Man. And that 27 miles don't even seem like shit. I'm there. Yeah, before I bring it back to Bronco. I was looking at some Fords too. I ain't never had a Ford. My cousin had a Ford Taurus, a 1998 Ford Taurus back in the day, yo. And that shit was hot for the time, yo. And I used to whip that bitch all the time. Matter of fact, he had a couple of cars. I ain't had no car then. But I used to drive my cousin because he had like 3 cars. In which it doesn't even matter. He can only drive one fucking car, so whatever car he in, I'll just snatch the keys to one of the other 2 cars and be whipping around town and that shit like that shit mine, yo. Fuck that. Yeah, I used to whip that Ford Taurus all the time. I used to like that shit because he had like at the time he had the newest Pioneer seat and that shit. Had some kicker competition, like some 12s or some 15s in the back. With the tweeters hanging up high in the front by the window, yo, that shit, yo, the system of that shit used to knock, nigga. That shit used to be so loud. That's why I can't hear it now. Used to come through that bit. Whoa, 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 whoa. Why we used to do that? I got 2 15s in my trunk now. I ain't gonna lie. That goddamn one of them shits blew out. So I got 2 15s and one of them worked. And every once in a while when I'm riding, I just knock some shit, some OJ Gold. Doo, 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 doo. Loud ass speakers. But I was looking at Fords too. Some of the newer Ford Explorers. I'm looking at any mid-size SUV. But Ford Explorer, that's a full size. The Ford Escape XLT, that shit looks a little bit bigger than the Equinox, and that's what I keep saying too. Like honestly, I can't find a full size in my price range, I might just upgrade my Equinox and get a newer one and get like a 2014 or 2015 Equinox and just keep the same vehicle. I got a 2006. Trade that shit in, they'll probably give me like $800 for that shit towards a trade in and just get a fucking, like I said, a newer Equinox. Yeah, that shit ain't good for you, man. Having that shit so loud. It's fun though. You know what I'm saying? That shit is nice. It's nice though. When you can feel that shit, yo. You in the car, especially if you get comfortable, like you say, just riding around town, you ain't speeding, you just doing 40. And you get that good lean in the seat, and you can feel that fucking bass vibrate. I like that shit, yo. I like to be able to feel that shit. But now I notice I get old too, bro. I guess I do that shit every once in a while, but most of the time going to work, I be listening to NPR. Listening to some news, some coronavirus news riding to work. Motherfuckers talk about the elections. I listen to talk radio now, like, man. And then in the truck, I got my old mixtape in there, so even when I turn that shit on, I just listen to my damn self. It's fuck it. About to go on. Stan the man. What up? I'm playing this one tonight though, Stan. I ain't gonna lie. I told myself like I've been having some long nights for a minute. And well, not long nights, but just long days and not sleeping well. So I already knew like today, man, I was gonna take a nap or go to bed early or something. So I decided to go to bed early. So you know what? I'll just wake up later tonight and just do a late night paint stream. Yeah, I would normally be sleeping right about now. Some nights I just be up, but normally I would have been in bed. I was tired today, and I knew like I wasn't gonna get some sleep last night. I stayed up too late last night, and then I had stuff to do today. I did that little photo shoot, and I did a little bit of gardening this morning. I had a couple of little chores I needed to do, man. I had to do some gardening. I had to do a photo shoot. I had to go drop off a painting to UPS. I sprayed some bug killer and stuff around the house. And after all that, I was like, man, I'm just going to bed early. It was like a full little day. Played the game for a little while. I was like, you know what? Just go to bed early and just get up in a couple hours. So I think I went to sleep like 7 o'clock, something like that, and woke up like like 10:30 or 11 o'clock or some shit. Just got a couple hours of sleep. Yo, the Zoom meeting went pretty well the other night, yo. Just the regular, just what I'm doing now. It's all it was, I don't know. It's just regular stuff. Just talk about stuff.
if our family's been sitting on our own land?
I think this is it.
People feel so real, and the emotions. There's often a lot of joy in your paintings, but there's also, some serious topics. But I just feel like I want to meet these people or I know them. Is that something you strive for in your work?
I want the viewer to have that sense of familiarity with the image itself, and so I try to tell people, like, when you see them, it should feel like that's your nephew, or your uncle, or your brother, or your neighbor. I want my images to feel comfortable to people.
And I like, because I was a history major and I also love literature, you often put, like even in the painting behind you, books, especially related to the Black experience. Like, I just love those details. It makes me want to go look them up. And is that been important to you?
Oh yeah, you know I gotta do it like that. So she just asked a few questions, asked about my art.
Expensive ones out of the paints that I use.
She asked about my membership with the Black Scranton Project. She asked me a little bit about Juneteenth and why we celebrate Juneteenth. She asked about my TV show. And she asked some questions about, like, the business side of my art and commissions that I'm doing. And then I just sat there and did the regular thing. That was Maureen McGuigan. She's Maureen is she's the lady who she I forgot her title, yo, but she writes the grants for the Lackawanna Arts Council. She's on the grant writing side of things. And her brother runs the Bog. Connor at the Bog, that's her brother. Yeah, she works. Why can't I find that shit? I don't know why it took me so long. She is the deputy director of the Arts and Culture Center at Lackawanna County. Studied playwriting at St. Mary's College of California. Studied history at the University of Pittsburgh. Went to Scranton High School and lives in Scranton. And if you go to Lackawanna County, this right here, yeah. Yeah, so that's what she is. She's pretty high up in the board, yo, like deputy director. Like she's one of the people who issues out the checks. She helped write the checks. Like if you need the art grant money, that's who you talk to. and she say she's one of the main people who say yay or nay. And the first time I got a grant, she was the one who helped me get that shit, yo. Like, I got a $1,500 grant for a Black Scranton project that we did for Black History Month this year, and it was easy. You know, submit your grant, uh, write a decent proposal, and if they feel like it's something that adds value to the community, they're gonna fund that shit, yo. No, I got one. I already got one. So, and now I'm working with Nikki Moser again from the Keystone Ironworks, and we're trying to get a grant to do a project with the kids. But put this thing in production. Make my little $1 million and move to the woods somewhere. Fuck that. I'm out of here. Give me my money. I'm haul ass somewhere. Where you going? I'm not telling nobody. The next move. Get the fuck out of here. Alright, so we're gonna start adding some color to this painting right here. This should be interesting because, like I said, this is the second time I've painted this image, but it's hella smaller than the first one. The first one is that ain't even big enough. That shit's that size. Yeah, the first one was on the canvas this size. That's a hella difference, yo. So, I don't know, it always feels weird to paint an image the second time. But then, like, now painting it a second time and painting it a different size. Just hope it's gonna look as good, if not better, than the first time. And then tomorrow, I'll be in Scranton, filming another episode for my TV show with a young artist named Holly. With the first one, I still have it. it actually got submitted into the state of the art contest this year, which COVID fucked everything up because that shit should have been already kicked off. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it's a statewide contest to have your art on exhibit at the State Museum, which is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So this is a state funded thing. It's a really big thing, and it's a statewide contest. So this year they said they had over 2,000 submissions, which they had to narrow down to 109 individual pieces to be our 109 artists. I don't know if everybody just got one piece. I only got one piece. So anyway, I think they narrowed it down to 109 pieces that actually got into the museum this year out of over 2,000. And my piece was a part of the group that made it in. And it's that painting. It's the original large painting of this that made the cut for that contest. So right now I still have it. Yeah, the first one is too expensive. The guy really wanted it, but it's out. He said it's out of his price range. So he just asked if I can paint it again for him. He's like, I really want that fucking painting, bro. I want that one. He was like, can you paint it smaller so I can afford it? Yes, I can do that. I can paint it smaller so that you can afford it. Yes. No. All 109 that were selected out of the 2,000 get to be in the museum. Out of that 109, normally they said each year the museum purchases at least one painting to keep in their own personal collection for the museum. On top of that, there's 3 prizes: the grand prize, first place, and second, third place, and then there's honorable mentions, and I think those are cash rewards as well. So you take 2,000 and something, then you narrow it down to the 109, and they get in, and then one or two of them will win some shit, and then the museum may actually buy one for the price you have on it. And so my paint, I want $8,000 for that shit. Really, I want $37,000 for it. But I feel like my name isn't out there right now. So to give people a little break and to help my name get out there, I'm gonna put a major discount on my art, and I'll let it go for $8,000. But that's really a $37,000 painting, because that's what's gonna happen. I'll sell it for $8,000, and then it becomes a part of the private gallery of the museum. And if it ever goes up for auction, then the museum's gonna auction it off, and they're gonna fucking sell it for $500,000, and then it's gonna be in some private collection somewhere. And then years later, this private collector, he probably tries to sell it or auction it off, and then it's gonna go for 1.7 million somewhere. Where in the beginning, I ain't get but $8,000 for the motherfucker. See what I'm saying? So it's a discount. I gotta work my hand right now until motherfuckers respect me a little bit better. Cause major artists, these motherfuckers sell one piece every couple years, yo. They good. You know what I'm saying? Some of these artists are a couple pieces a year. And to live my life like this, yo, if I could sell just like 2 pieces a year for like 20 grand, $25,000 a painting, and just do 2 of them a year, I'll be good. I could chill off $50,000 a year. If it ain't nothing but 2 paintings, shit. Let me find out. That's it. That's that trap. That's that original, yo. Just like any other person. Once again, yo, one of my favorite artists, yo, Tim Akamori, yo, and he produces really inspirational, high quality, fucking art, yo. Like his shit, he's the shit, and I can see why people are attracted to his art and why people want his art, yo. And he's like internationally known, yo, and his shit is good. Is good art, you know. And looking at the prices of some of his originals, like I say, motherfucker be charging $37,000 for an original. One of his original pieces, yo, 40 grand for one piece. His prints, just a print, man, it should be like $3,000 for a signed print, bruh. 37 grand. I mean 3,700 for a print. $2,000, $3,000, 37,000. I'm like, I'm like, how do I get to this point? Because I feel like, I mean, of course, granted, he's college educated and he has fucking years and years of experience above me. But I feel like one day, because I'm not gonna stop doing this, and I'm only like 10 years deep into this shit. But if I can keep cultivating my talents and pursuing bigger concepts and try to convey these things through my art, yo, and give me another 10 years, yo, motherfuckers gonna have to give me what I want for my shit, yo. You gonna have to give me what I want. I want to be in that bracket, in that caliber artist that make 20, 30 grand off a piece. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta put that work in, though. Keep a strong message in your art, yo, and be passionate about your art, and just keep making that shit. And someday somebody gonna see the value. They gonna value that shit as much, if not more than you. You know what I'm saying? Motherfucker gonna value that shit if you value it. You know what I'm saying? That's why you can tell motherfuckers who play with art. Some people play with art, yo, and some people live that shit, yo. I'm trying to live this shit. And that's what be getting me, because I don't know. I'm not no motherfucking psychic, no mind reader, or nothing like that. But I'm a good judge of character for the most part, I feel. And I got good instincts. And sometimes I be seeing like all this. That's why on my TV show I always ask artists, yo, how y'all feel about social media? How y'all feel about digital art and all this other shit, yo? Cause I feel like, man, you can tell motherfuckers who just play with that shit. You look at that shit like you just playing around, ain't it? Stop playing, man. But anyway, these motherfuckers be making bread off of it. I don't get it. I do not get it. Alright, I don't think I need to smoke no more. We need to start painting. Let's get to it. I'm about to put them colors on that thing. What? About to put them colors on that thing. See how this work out. Yo, Stan, what's that stuff you told me to look into, yo? That shit was hella interesting. The something wave. Oh my god, Stan. Oh, why I keep forgetting this laptop isn't touchscreen. I'm so used to having that old touchscreen up here. Bro, I did look that stuff up, and I listened to this one Indian guy. It seems like it's more Western Indian tradition. The Akashic records in the Akashic field. Yeah. That's pretty interesting stuff. Let's see. Sorry, guys, you might have to just suffer through this. You're gonna have to suffer
Friday,
through
June
it.
12th. Let's talk PlayStation.
Okay, let's talk
Well,
PlayStation.
what a week it has been, huh? We finally got our PlayStation 5 reveal event. We saw games, the console, a slight glimpse at the UI, And we have some additional details to go over later in the video, but first we always do some smaller news stories and also our PlayStation Plus reminder. The June games that are currently available, Call of Duty World War II and Star Wars Battlefront 2, you have a lot of time to download these games or add them to your library. Let us start with Persona 4 Golden, a PlayStation Vita classic, or really a PS2 classic, but Golden is the best way to play this game. But unfortunately, not many people have PlayStation Vitas, and Atlas sees that, and that's why this past week we saw some images show up on Steam implying that the game is coming to PC. Now, we're also hearing some rumors that the game will actually get announced tomorrow, the 13th, during the PC Games Showcase. So this is technically a rumor, not confirmed. However, it seems very likely that this is actually going to happen. And, you know, the only tragedy here is not that it's going to PC, but rather we have no indication right now that there's a PlayStation 4 version. And, you know, Persona has been really popular lately ever since 5. Something where I think 3 and 4 would do great on PlayStation 4. There's really no modern way to play these games outside of a Vita, and also, ironically, a PSP for Persona 3. So we'll see what happens, but otherwise, Persona 4 is leaving Vita and going to PC. Now, as I just mentioned, we did have the reveal event, and that showed us what the PlayStation 5 console design actually looks like. And, you know, I should preface this by stating first,
I ain't gonna lie to you, I should do a
recap and impressions video. So every single event we condensed into the first
this would be a good time to do
some impressions of the event, so that's why we're not going to really.
Why can't I think of it? A time lapse. Jesus Christ.
Anyway,
with the stupid long brain fart just now.
This actually happened Wednesday, the night before the reveal event, where
hurry up and get to it, dude, because your voice is fucking annoying for some reason. It's not like terrible, but I would rather listen to someone else tell me the exact same thing that you're saying. I know some of you guys feel that way about my voice, but until you find somebody else dishing out some art and education, y'all fuckers are stuck with me. So, I mean, but hell, there's hella motherfuckers doing gaming vlogs and shit, bitch. I don't have to listen to your corny ass voice. I will definitely find someone else to listen to, bro. Alright, damn, yeah, this is a perfect time for a time lapse. Sorry guys, the phone might have to take the better fucking view for this one. Ooh. Most of the time when I do time lapse, I'll just do it by myself in here because the phone has to have the stand to get the good view. And then it's hard to fucking like make sure that bitch just. I might have to drop this thing a little bit. Well, you know what? Actually, since this piece has been painted already and the painted image is already out there, I don't know. Would it even be worth having it now? I'm gonna do it for my own pleasure. But how am I gonna have this camera? How am I gonna have this camera? What if I set you guys over here? Would that work? Can that actually support that like that? Oh guys, I think that might work like that. Yo, Frank, what's good, bro? Alright. So I just actually had the phone, I had the PlayStation camera set directly on top of the phone. And that seems like we can go that route. So now I just have to start this. Okay. Alright, now I set you guys here. Oh, now it's, for some reason, it's in the was in the view of the now it's in front of the fucking Jesus Christ. Oh my fucking God, just balance, just like that. Perfect. That's perfect. Now, if I don't touch or bump this thing, we're good. This dude's voice, I'm gonna listen to him now. Let's see.
The creative director at Media Molecule, Mark Healy, sent out
Don't
this
bump
tweet. He
the
said,
camera.
"There isn't any Dreams-related stuff as part of tomorrow that I'm aware of, by the way. Just excited as a fan. Sony are good at keeping secrets within and without. I'm dying to know what the thing looks like." So there you go. We have a co-founder at one of Sony's first-party studios not knowing what it looked like. And I would venture a guess that most of Sony's first-party had zero idea of what it would look like, because why would they be involved? I mean, when you really think about the hierarchy here, third-party is kept pretty far away from console generations where, you know, they get dev kits. Well, depending on how big the publisher and developer is, they get dev kits last. Second party is trusted. First party is most trusted. They would get hardware access first, but something like the retail hardware and the general design of the device and what it looks like, this is something where it's safely guarded and very few people are closely attached to that project. So it's just kind of ridiculous to even humor the idea that the box would leak. The only time we do get machines leaking is when they've already been manufactured, sitting in warehouses and waiting to be shipped to retailers like the Slim consoles. But while we're on the topic of Media Molecule, they're hosting a very cool event called DreamsCon on June 30th, and it is exactly what it sounds like. So on June 30th, they'll be hosting a live stream, which they'll showcase a bunch of amazing community efforts and projects that are being built within Dreams. But after the showcase, they're doing a virtual show floor, kind of like E3, where there's separate booths showcasing levels and demos that you can jump into. If you are a Dreams creator right now, you can submit to be a part of this whole thing. Just get your submission in by June 24th. But once again, an amazing example of what can be done in Dreams. A virtual show floor. Moving on to some Naughty Dog news, and The Last of Us Part 2, the creative director, Neil Druckmann, was talking to GQ in an interview where he was discussing the next project, and he had this interesting quote I'm going to share with you all. He said, "As you start wrapping things up, creatively there are fewer and fewer responsibilities, and my mind can't help but think about the next thing." So yeah, the next thing could be Part 3. The next thing could be some new IP. Now, this is all that revealing, of course. When any developer finishes a project, there's two directions they can go. They can start a new one or continue the franchise. So, big whoop. But when we look at least how Sony approaches games, we've heard on a number of occasions from first party, second party, even third, even independent developers, all relaying the same information that more often than not when working with Sony, it's very easy, very open, and they're very supportive of a number of different ideas, and they don't often try to steer you in one particular direction. That's not to say that Sony, as a publisher, when providing funding, doesn't make decisions, doesn't cross the line at a certain point or cut projects, this and that. They'll certainly do that when they deem it necessary, but we've seen so often that a developer, when working with Sony, can make a vertical slice in pre-production, do a few iterations to really get to a build that's playable and fun, that the developer thinks is a great idea that can go into full production. They present that to Sony, and Sony often is very on board with the original idea without trying to do so much creative interception, right? And for somebody like Naughty Dog, first party, where they're owned by Sony, they're just in the upper echelon at this point where they could probably, in all likelihood, get away with doing whatever they want. And so obviously, it's always very exciting to see what direction Naughty Dog will end up going in. Also, if you remember last week, we were talking about The Last of Us Part 2's latest trailer, which was using a cover version of the song True Faith, written and composed by Lottie Kestner. She was unaware that her version of the song was being used in the trailer. Well, it turns out Naughty Dog has claimed full responsibility for this oversight, stating, we didn't properly credit her. And so some conversations have probably happened behind the scenes there where either payment or proper credit is going to be given to the artist in the game's credits and properly displaying this in the commercial. Either way, that's all taken care of, so good on Naughty Dog to claim some responsibility there. Next up, the embargo has officially lifted for the game, which means review scores are now out there, and so far across the board, very impressive. Some good grades on Naughty Dog's latest Uncomfortable Adventure. IGN 10 out of 10. I think Push Square was a perfect score. Game Informer, perfect score. Games Radar, 5 out of 5. Video Games Chronicles, 5 out of 5. GameSpot, 8 out of 10. There's also a lot of other sites that don't hang out
GameSpot gave it an 8 out of 10.
Read the content of the review and see everybody's varying opinion. Remember, reviews are always one person's opinion, so don't let that influence what you may or may not think about a game. It's always important.
I already pre-ordered my copy, so I don't give a fuck what people been saying about the game, but I'm still kind of leery about it. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it just got like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, and then an 8 out of 10.
This game's gone through such an interesting news cycle, of course, and so we're now 1 week away from being able to play it ourselves. Moving on to Destiny 2, you may be wondering why we're talking about this. Well, for one very big reason. Outside of the fact that the game is getting 2 more years of support, that the Beyond Light expansion was recently announced, this game has also been confirmed to be a free upgrade on PlayStation 5 if you own it on PlayStation 4. That in the game will run at 60 frames per second on PS5, and that there will be cross-generational play between PS4 and PS5 players. But we really knew that anyway. Sony's already confirmed that there's cross-gen play, and that's just dependent on the developer and how they want to, if they want to enable that for their game. But this is our first direct confirmation, in particular for PlayStation hardware, where it will be free to PlayStation 5, right? We looked at the Cyberpunk situation where they confirmed smart delivery, and you just infer that that will be the same case on PS5. Then we have Madden indirectly stating that they will have an upgrade path for next-gen consoles, right? Not directly stating PlayStation. And so this is an area where a lot of people have been slightly concerned, like, hey, is Sony not going to allow this? And I think what's really at this point happening here is that Sony's not going to, it seems as though they're not going to make some sort of PR statement about it, right? Like, that's how Microsoft is approaching this. They've called it smart delivery, which, that's fine. It's not really a bad thing, but it's just, that's really what it is. It's kind of a PR marketing thing, just saying, hey, this game will work no matter what hardware you buy it on, but that's really what we do right now on PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox One, Xbox One X. So it's kind of an expectation going to PlayStation 5. So it seems like Sony's not going to call it anything. I mean, prior it used to be called cross-buy between PS3 and PS4. So as of right now, considering Bungie had the green light to actually make this announcement without waiting for Sony to say anything, it seems like we don't have to wait for Sony to say anything. So we'll probably just have to start looking at each particular game, each particular publisher, and them disclosing if they have a PS5 version, will it be a free upgrade from any existing PS4 version. So now let's get into some new details from the reveal event. And quite honestly, there's not really a whole lot. What we saw is what we got. There was no extra write-ups on the blog that revealed anything more than what we already knew. But one thing a lot of people were concerned about is, hey, this PlayStation 5 console design, it doesn't look as though it can lay horizontally, but there are actually some official product shots out of Sony Interactive that shows the console can be placed on its side. I think we have 2 specific different angles to look at here, one which shows the stand. So I think the question now is just, is the stand a pack-in or do you have to buy that? Now, we've never had PlayStation hardware where the stand was packed in. Nope. As far as I know, every single time where they've offered a stand, from PS2 to PS4 and any slim consoles, it's always been, an optional thing that you buy for, and it's kind of a rip-off. It's always like at least $19.99, sometimes $29.99. Yep. I would hope this is because clearly the system doesn't look as though it can lay horizontal.
That's why I've never had a stand.
Looks like it needs it. But either way, confirmed, you can lay the console on its side. Now, having said that, let's actually talk about the console design, right? So this is something where I did the recap and impressions video right after the event ended. So I was not looking at other opinions or influenced at all in my gut reaction of what it looked like. And initially I thought, wow, this actually looks much better than I thought, because, inherently, no matter what it looks like, I think people are going to be put off by it because they had some kind of idea of what it looked like, and it's not going to be that, especially if people were heavily influenced by mock-ups. So I thought, wow, I think this looks really nice. A lot of people are going to like this. But of course, it's still the internet, right? So people that don't like it are going to be very vocal about it. So there's a lot of varying opinions that people think the hardware just looks ridiculous, or they don't like the clamshell-esque design. And to be honest, there's some really good memes out there, so we'll share some of those as well, some B-roll. There's a lot of good ones floating around out there. But that just happens all the time, right? I think it'll grow on people for sure. I did put out a poll on the YouTube community tab. Seems like we can always get some pretty decent data there, but keep in mind it is considered biased since a lot of the viewership are PlayStation fans, but inherently this poll does reach viewers that have interacted with the channel and they're not necessarily subscribed. But either way, as I record this right now, it's sitting at 20,000 votes, and it's getting a lot by the minute here, so I'm guessing by the time this is uploaded, it might have 30,000. But at 20,000, we've got 78% saying they love it, 5% I hate it, 17% I'm indifferent. Now, this poll actually fared much better than the poll I did for the DualSense, which actually that poll is over 50,000, which that's actually a really good amount of data. So despite that, it could lean heavily biased there. It's still a lot of people that seem generally pretty happy with the overall design and approach to how this hardware looks. And it's very bold. The one thing I will say about this to actually infer some kind of genuine information outside of opinion is that the way that Sony approaches console design, this is coming from Andrew House back when he was president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, that when deciding the PlayStation 4 design, he had 2 different boxes to choose from, basically, that they nailed it down to right. And he kept both of them in his office, and he often just kept looking at them over and over and over again to try and make his decision on which one would be the one to go with, right, for final retail hardware. And he made his decision based on the silhouette of the platform. And I think that is a very important thing to look at here when we talk about the PS5's design, is the silhouette. So when you turn this into, an icon, or when you give it that profile look head on, it's got a very distinct profile. You're not going to get this confused with anything else in the PlayStation hardware. Lineup. And so much like we saw on the PlayStation site, where you had a bunch of different small little icons,
and this is why I keep my phone on silent.
I think that's what really played a key role into designing PlayStation 5. So I could see why they went in the direction they did. Honestly, what I like the most about it is I think they nailed the two-tone perfectly for this machine, because I love the blue accent that actually glows against the bottom white panel there. I think it looks very sleek. Although I must admit, PlayStation 3, I think the Fat PS3 is still my favorite console design. I'm pretty sure nothing's still going to beat that one for me. Sorry, PlayStation 5. Now, one of the games that we saw yesterday from Studio Japan and Team Asobi is Astro's Playroom, and much like Playroom and Playroom VR on PS4, this will come pre-installed on every single PlayStation 5 completely free, and much like those games, this will showcase the DualSense controller. So Playroom and Playroom VR were a showcase for the DualShock 4 and PlayStation VR. This will have purpose-built levels that really flex the adaptive triggers and haptic feedback of the DualSense. So that's cool, right? Free content. There's nothing really wrong with that whatsoever. And this is what we actually heard from the Wired articles, where they had a bunch of particularly fleshed-out tech demos that were made to showcase these features of the DualSense. As for the rest of the announcements, like I said, not a whole lot of additional details really came out of the show from what we saw. We just have high-quality screenshots, trailers, and blog write-ups that describe the trailers. So we didn't learn much, but what we did find out was 2 timed console exclusives, which for right now, from what we know, would be Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. So if you are looking to buy Series X, unfortunately that might have to be a year wait for you over there, but console timed exclusive, so it would be day and date with PS5 and PC. And of course, there was plenty of third-party here as well. So, I often say it's always important to watch Microsoft shows, whether it's E3 or any of their live streams as of recent, because they're still going to showcase third-party content, and that's still content that is going to be available on PlayStation 5 and PlayStation platforms, right? So it works vice versa. If you're a Series X owner or a potential Series X owner, you're going to want to watch PlayStation shows for a lot of the content that Sony will be showcasing as well, that will be available on all hardware. As for Sony first party, or really PlayStation Studios, we have to be mindful of that now, because the umbrella here of PlayStation Studios includes first party and second party, but under PS Studios we had 9 announcements, so that's a lot. people often had these high expectations of exclusive, and major game, but that's really unrealistic more often than not. I think the only time we ever had something really crazy was E3 2015. Even then, that wasn't filled with the volume amount of exclusives that people typically expect. It's just the magnitude of each particular announcement. But anyway, what we're looking at here, 5 out of 9 of those games are really large games. I mean, Gran Turismo 7 is a system seller. You may not care about Gran Turismo, and that's fine, but it is a system seller. You cannot discredit that game. Ratchet & Clank, big platformer. It may not have mass appeal nowadays, but it's a fun-loving, beautiful platformer, and it does look so gorgeous. Spider-Man is actually the big one here, a really big one. Obviously, it looks more like a Spider-Man 1.5, right? I described it as like a Persona 5 Royal. I think that seems pretty accurate with what little information we have here, but the turnaround is just too much, right? I was shocked to see Spider-Man here, but finding out what it is, appropriate, makes sense. This game's been benchmarked so much on PlayStation 5, so they've got some new content ready to go for what is principally kind of the same game, but that's fine. Spider-Man moved over 10 million, so that having this available very close to the PS5's launch, you would assume it's aiming day one. That's going to be a system seller as well. And then you're seeing IP like Little Big Planet come back. That's probably, in all likelihood, I think that game's probably going to bomb. I know that's so early to say, but looking at it, I'm like, oh no. This is a cool idea, very Mario 3D World, but I can't see that doing well. But they're bringing Little Big Planet back. Demon's Souls really speaks for itself. Returnal is also a welcome surprise from Housemarque. Their biggest project so far. That's kind of like Ready at Dawn, to be honest, where they went from PSP games to one of the most visually stunning games we've ever seen on console hardware, or really, I'd argue anywhere. That game just looks so magnificent today. And so we're seeing the same thing where Housemarque, traditionally, twin stick shooters, they haven't really gone too far out of that comfort zone, but Returnal very much looks like a pretty big scale game. Not incredibly visually stunning, but it is a big leap from their previous projects. Anyway, one thing that a lot of people were very upset about is that we did not get a price point for these machines, and we do have to say machines now because we have 2 versions, right? One that's all digital and one that has a disk drive. Well, we did not get a price point, despite it being the E3 timeframe where we traditionally always see price announcements for brand new hardware launches. So disappointing, and I think more people were even spurred on by the fact that a few days prior to the event, we had some Amazon UK listings that did have a price point, and it pegged the console around 600 British pounds sterling, which if you convert to USD, about $750, which is alarming to a lot of people. Now, Amazon has already quickly followed up, stating that the listings were made in error. But this is something where you have to tread carefully with retailer listings, right? They can be wildly inaccurate depending on the circumstance. So for something like a hardware launch, they're not going to know until Sony says something. But we've had situations where, let's say it's a month out from a Nintendo Direct, and we're hearing rumors about certain games that are coming, and that they'll be available like within a month or so. Nintendo likes to stealth drop a lot of games, and so Amazon has more often than not actually leaked some games. So really depends on the situation. Now let's talk about the PS5's UI, and we did see the UI. I'm seeing a lot of people not realize this. We saw the boot sequence of PlayStation 5 right before Astro's Playroom, where we got the product safety warning, then it prompted you to press the PlayStation button, and we even heard the sounds, which I'll play for you right here.
The user interface is what UI is, if I'm not mistaken.
And then they cut away to a trailer. I think it was Astro's Playroom, which was next, but yeah, we did see it. And this past week, we have another patent that details some features that we could potentially see in this user interface. What we're hearing in this recent patent is in-game stats, so stat tracking, things like that, overlaying hints, video guides. I'm actually also hearing picture-in-picture might be a potential feature of this hardware, of this user interface. So you can play a game and then choose your own overlay for a video app or a streaming service, whatever you want to do. That sounds great. That would be awesome for long, grindy trophy hunting games where you could just, kind of enjoy something else at the same time. But add this to the bucket of this complete roster of patents so far that all involve accessibility features, AI, a virtual assistant. You have to assume that a lot of this stuff, or a few of this stuff, will be ready by day one. If not day one, it will come later down the road. I mean, we have a few examples on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3 where, things were announced day one and they do come 3, 4, sometimes 5 years in the life cycle, but the features do end up coming. But it sounds like PS5 is going to be very accessible. Now, we also have a VR patent that is meant to tackle motion sickness, which is very important. It's just that the way this patent describes it is very strange. Motion sickness, of course, if you've never tried it, you may experience it the first time you do. If your body is completely still, but you experience a virtual space that moves you very quickly, the illusion can make you very sick. It happens to me. I need a lot of the accessibility features in games that allow me to teleport or give me some kind of tunnel vision so I don't look in my peripheral vision. I need that stuff to still play VR games. But this patent basically describes some kind of head-shaking device that would shake your head and the head-mounted display. And I guess that's their way of tricking your body into thinking that, hey, you're moving a little bit, so don't be upset that this virtual space is trying to simulate you driving a car at 90 miles per hour. I don't know. I mean, it sounds strange, but it really says that there's a device that will shake your head and the HMD, the head-mounted display. I don't really know if that's the correct direction to go in, but that is something that they were looking into. Now, with all that out of the way, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you could win a $10 PlayStation Network code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about with you all. So, yeah, we had... initially the week started off with another predictions video, but also we had a discussion about Sony releasing more games on PC. So it's about the Bloodborne rumor, which we didn't see at this event. But, we have a good discussion there about Sony releasing on PC, if that harms the PlayStation brand. And, of course, yesterday we had our recap and impressions of the entire PS5 event. So if you want every single announcement, watch that video. This coming week, now that we have PlayStation 5 footage, we have tons of games, we have got more doors open for topics that we can explore, so whatever we end up doing will probably be something relating to that, and I already have a few videos that I've been working on, and I've just been waiting for this event, so we've got a lot of exciting stuff coming now that more PS5 information is finally out there. But other than that, that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday. (1998). 4 Microsoft engineers create a prototype video game console in the hopes of competing against Sony's next video game machine, the PlayStation 2. March 1st, 1999. Sony officially announces the PlayStation 2 following the amazing success of the original PlayStation. March 10th, 2000. Microsoft officially announces their first video game console. It is known simply as Xbox.
So, for the first time,
damn, that shit's 20 years ago.
Xbox.
I feel so fucking old, and these young ass gamers don't know shit.
2004. Sony sits comfortably ahead of Microsoft and Nintendo, with roughly 71 million units sold. Microsoft, at the end of 2004, had sold 19 business. May 12th, 2005. Microsoft reveals the Xbox 360 on MTV. Days later, on the 16th, Sony reveals the PlayStation 3 at E3. The modern video game battle of the 21st century begins.
Now the time has come. You've waited long enough. I give you the future of gaming.
The Xbox 360 announcement was nothing short of a spectacle. With viral marketing campaigns and an over-the-top reveal on MTV with Elijah Wood hosting the event, and live performances by The Killers, the system was touted for its online capabilities and HD graphics. Microsoft's online ecosystem, Xbox Live, was going to the next level. With a marketplace where users can download games, demos, music, television, and movies, users can now play games online with friends, send messages, earn a reputation score, and system-wide achievements. Shortly after the reveal, Microsoft spent their entire E3 conference showcasing their new Sony killer, by showing off the system's user interface, controller, and games. Call of Duty 2, FIFA 06, Project Gotham Racing 3, Cameo, and Gears of War were among the titles shown. With little emphasis on the technical specifications and full focus on the system's entertainment capabilities, Microsoft wanted the world to know Xbox 360 was here to play.
That future starts right here, right now. This is my Xbox 360. It's here, and it's on.
The PlayStation 3 reveal was a completely different story, as Sony spent a vast majority of their E3 conference detailing the technical significance of the platform, detailing the system's new cell processor, reality synthesizer, and support for Blu-ray discs. Various tech demos were shown to demonstrate the power of the system, with many developers and industry figures discussing the overall proposal of what the system could do. The system was touted for having 6 USB ports, 2 HDMI ports, 3 Ethernet ports, slot readers for compact flash, SD, and memory stick, and full backwards compatibility with PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games. Sony proceeded to spend a smaller portion of the show on actual titles. Games like Resistance, Motorstorm, Killzone, Warhawk, Heavenly Sword, and Gran Turismo were showcased. No user interface was shown, and the promise of online connectivity was seldom. The show ended with a look at the console's design, and the E3 booth later showed the console's radically redesigned Boomerang controller. It was clear, Sony's message was different. It wasn't about fun, it was about power.
Impromptu Best Buy shop, and all of the new Xbox 360s are being unloaded.
The road to launch was long and arduous for both manufacturers. Microsoft was eyeing a holiday 2005 window, and Sony spring 2006. Microsoft was able to hit their goal, launching the Xbox 360 November 22, 2005 in North America. Shortly after, in December, the system hit Europe and Japan. Xbox 360 was offered in 2 different SKUs. The core system offered the console, a wired controller, and standard AV cables for $299. The main Xbox 360 bundle came with the system, a 20GB detachable hard drive, wireless controller, headset, and component cables for HD. The bundle retailed for $399. Games like Call of Duty 2, Need for Speed Most Wanted, Perfect Dark Zero, and Cameo Elements of Power were available at launch. There were 18 games total to choose from day one. Microsoft's only enemy on November, and the year to come, was themselves. Sony and Nintendo were far from ready. Despite being the only player on the market, Microsoft immediately struggled with supply. Maximum production was not enough to sufficiently supply demand, and most units were entirely sold through in the US and Canada. By the end of 2005, roughly 900,000 units were sold in North America, 500,000 in Europe, and 100,000 in Japan. Demand at the time was so high that 40,000 units reappeared on eBay within a month of launch. Nearly 10% of the system's first 400,000 units shipped to the US. Demand was seemingly high everywhere, but Japan, a problematic market for Microsoft. Whether it was nationalistic preference, the region's desire to play handhelds, or the 360's lack of Eastern titles at launch, Japan would continue to be the land of low sales figures for Microsoft. Though getting a foothold in Japan was the least of the company's worries with the Xbox 360. As early reports after launch indicated, many consumers were experiencing technical problems. Various concerns, such as the system scratching discs or displaying a general hardware malfunction, were cropping up too frequently for it to be a coincidence. Microsoft at the time reaffirmed the public that hardware failure for the platform was in line with most consumer electronics, typically 3 to 5%. It wouldn't be until 2007 that Microsoft officially acknowledges the problems. Despite these concerns, Microsoft had an entire year lead on Sony, something that played a very large role in the long term for not only consumer preference, but developer preference as well. And while the first year of games were mostly PC ports and HD upgrades, there was always something to play. By year's end, Dead Rising, Saints Row, Viva Pinata, and Gears of War released, all of which were well received. And the aggressive tone from their 2005 reveal was still as prevalent as ever. Microsoft did not forget Sony was launching. At E3 2006, Peter Moore made the deliberate announcement of Grand Theft Auto releasing on Xbox 360 the same day as the PS3 version, and that the 360 version would feature exclusive episodic content on Xbox Live.
Is my new edition. Microsoft and Rockstar Games are bringing Grand Theft Auto 4, the next generation of the wildly successful Grand Theft Auto series, to Xbox 360 on October the 16th, 2007 in North America, and October the 19th, 2007 in Europe. The first date it's available.
That, coupled with various other titles Microsoft had planned for 2007, showed that they meant business. Microsoft also had a direct answer to Blu-ray, offering a $200 accessory that allowed the 360 to play HD DVDs, a completely separate format from Blu-ray that Microsoft had backed, directly competing against Sony's decision to go with Blu-ray in the optical format war. By the time PlayStation 3 was ready to launch, Microsoft had sold roughly 6.5 million Xbox 360s. Before launch, the PlayStation 3 and Sony's message was categorically a disaster to say the least. Sony had strong competition, yet felt no threat was on the horizon. It was as if the PlayStation 3 was the only platform coming, and it was the only platform anyone cared about, and this was far from the truth. Harsh realities really set in when the public got a closer look into what the PS3 was going to be at their 2006 E3 press conference, a show that the internet will likely never forget, as it was and has been mocked for years.
It's Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer! Remember that one?
Genji 2 is an action game which is based on Japanese history. So here's this giant enemy crab.
And it's the feel of the controller in my hands. I like the hard plastic, little knobby bits.
The public got a look at the PlayStation Store, the promised online functionality, some PSP connectivity, and plenty of footage of games to come. Some crowd-pleasing moments like Metal Gear Solid 4 and Final Fantasy XIII were quickly forgotten at the end of the show when Kaz Hirai famously announced the PlayStation 3's overwhelmingly high price.
The 20GB PlayStation 3 will retail for $499 US and 549 Canadian dollars. And the 60GB PlayStation 3 for $599 US, $659 Canadian.
Price was high, and yet Sony was going to lose money. A lot of it. The controller reverted back to the original design without rumble functionality. The original amount of USB, HDMI, and Ethernet ports were scaled down. The system was going to be supplied with standard video cables, but that wasn't enough. The PS3 and the components inside were too much to manufacture. And while it was common practice for Sony to take a loss on hardware in order to sell software, each PS3 sold would mean a $200 loss, over $800 to manufacture one system. Though at the time, PS3 was technically a bargain, as the system was also a Blu-ray player, and dedicated Blu-ray players were going for well over $1,000. All hurdles aside, PlayStation 3 launched November 11th, 2006 in Japan. Shortly after, the system hit North America on November 17th, with a European launch being delayed to 2007. There was two models to choose from, 60GB and 20GB. The 20GB lacked Wi-Fi, card readers, and a chrome trim.
The initial low supply of units caused a number of violent incidents, with customers being robbed, there were riots, and even one man getting shot. eBay was a very lucrative option for most, with systems typically selling for well over $1,000. However, enthusiasm was low, and with the PS3 out in consumers' hands, the growing pains started to show. Online capabilities were at the absolute bare minimum. The PlayStation Store was just a fancy web browser, and there was no cross-game chat, and games had visibly worse performance compared to the 360 versions. Sony's messaging wasn't entirely helpful either, with most ads creating confusion rather than actual desire. PS3 just had a poor reputation and was the laughingstock of the internet. You couldn't go to any gaming-related website without finding a PS3 meme or console debates. And it wasn't just gamers. Developers were very vocal about the platform and how difficult it was to develop for. A contributing factor for why the system frequently saw games with lesser performance than the 360 versions, despite the PS3's untapped potential. PS3 did have a few breaks though. Online play was free, the system was future-proofed with Blu-ray and a standard hard disk drive, and you could install Linux on it. And it offered a great value when comparing its hardware features to 360, where a lot of the features were sold separately.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
You're 7 months into the sales cycle for PS3, and you're cutting prices. Why?
Well, as you pointed out, it's a two-pronged announcement. The introduction of the 80-gig machine with our million-unit-selling MotorStorm game packed in at $599, and then consequently reducing the price on the existing 60-gigabyte model to $499.
Within the first year, Sony got the message. PS3 needed work. Rumble was added back to the controller, and firmware updates added requested features to the OS. Hopeful game announcements like Little Big Planet and PlayStation Home were made. The system was even price dropped to as low as $399, with the announcement of the 40-gigabyte model. But this came at the expense of PS2 backwards compatibility, a feature that Sony stayed keen on removing in order to bring down manufacturing costs. By the end of the PS3's first full year, the system saw Resistance Fall of Man, Warhawk, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, and Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction as the standout titles to play. The future was bright, but there was still a long way to go. By June 30th, 2007, PlayStation 3 sales reached 4.3 million. Microsoft at the same time was at 8.3 million.
I can remember that phase too because
we set up these two Xboxes here. The
like,
home theater. The first day, the DVD mag.
When I had the Xbox 360 when it came out, and then like he said, like when the PS3 came out, man, that shit was hella expensive. Like I ain't grabbed that shit up as soon as it came out. It was out for like, so the Xbox 360 came out almost a year before the PS3. And then the PS3 was out for like a year or something, almost 2 years before I got that shit. But that was due to the price drop. They had to come down on the price on that shit, motherfuckers. Like, goddamn, PlayStation. Because I had the PlayStation 1, had the PlayStation 2. And then that's when Microsoft put out the Xbox when I had the PS2. So I didn't get the first Xbox. That shit looked corny as hell anyway. Then, like I said, between the PS2 and the PS3, the Xbox 360 dropped. So I was like, fuck that, I want a new console. And just grabbed that Xbox. Xbox was fun, but like they say, they rushed it. They tried to rush it out that first holiday season, and everybody started getting the red ring of death. I got that shit twice. I had 3 360 consoles. 3 of them. Because the first 2 had the fucking ring of death. I was like, what the fuck, Microsoft? And then it was crazy, like, having to ship that shit back and send it in, and now I'm sitting here fucking weeks without a game. It's like, you son of a bitch. I gotta send my Fossil smartwatch into the shop to get repaired. I fucked that shit up. All this digital shit, man. And then I noticed, like, with COVID, well, I got one perpetual motion watch where if you just wind it up and wear it, you know, it doesn't have a battery in it. That shit just works from motion. But my other two watches, so I got like 4 watches. I got and 3 of them are Fossil. So I got 2 regular battery operated Fossil watches, and then my digital Fossil. And my digital Fossil is broke, and my 2 battery Fossils, both of them need new batteries in them. Like, god damn. And so I just wear my Tommy Bahama watch. I say, you know, I don't need no battery. Just wind that shit up one time and just wear that shit. I'm getting hungry now. Damn.
On display was totally destroyed because of the inside. It totally scratched the whole DVD. So first time there, it froze. We're like, okay, it was just fluke. Maybe something happened. It froze again. So guys, honestly.
Internally, Microsoft's Peter Moore has now fully grasped the gravity of the situation on their hands. The defect rate for Xbox 360 was far too high to ignore, and action had to be taken. Moore worked out with the finance team just how much it was going to cost to make things right. He recalled, "We knew we had a problem. I remember going to Robbie Bach, my boss, and saying,
Here at Ford, we want to say thank you to all those on the front lines. When so many rely on you, you can rely.
I think we could have a $1 billion problem here." Moore had a meeting with then Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer to tell him what had to be done. I am trembling sat in front of Steve, who I love to death, but he can be an intimidating human being. Steve said, "Okay, talk me through this." I said, "If we don't do this, this brand is dead. This is a Tylenol moment." Steve looked at me and said, "What have we got to do?" I said, "We've got to take them all back, and we've got to do this in a first-class way." "What's it going to cost?" I remember taking a deep breath, looking at Robbie, and saying, "We think it's $1.15 billion, Steve." He said, "Do it." There was no hesitation. July 5th, 2007, Microsoft officially announces a 3-year warranty extension to all Xbox 360 consoles from their original purchase date. New internal chipsets were on the horizon to hopefully help the console's failure rate, but for now, every consumer was covered for free Xbox repairs should their machines fail under the 3 red lights moniker.
That shit happened to me twice.
Amidst all the controversial debate of PS3 and Xbox 360, the Nintendo Wii saw tremendous demand, and by September 2007, the Wii officially surpasses Xbox 360 in total worldwide sales. This would be the beginning of Nintendo's mostly irrelevant dominance as gamers continued to scrutinize PS3 and 360 while largely ignoring Nintendo due to Wii's radically different approach to games. But there was something very important in September. Halo 3, one of Xbox 360's most important titles, coveted and revered worldwide. The game was a huge success and is still fondly remembered by all to this day. By the end of 2007, Xbox gamers were enjoying not only Halo 3, but fantastic titles like Mass Effect, BioShock, Lost Planet,
Mass
and
Effect was
Crackdown,
good. The
all
first
of which were only available on 360 at
Lost
that time.
Planet was
Though one
good.
shocking announcement to all was that Bungie would be leaving parent company Microsoft and going fully independent in the future. Peter Moore would also be leaving the company as well. As 2007 came to a close, one thing was for certain. Sony had a lot riding on 2008, while many thought Microsoft didn't have enough after Halo 3.
Toshiba has announced it will no longer develop, make, or market HD DVD players and recorders. That effectively means an end to the high-definition format war, with Blu-ray emerging as the clear winner.
2008 started off with a small, yet important victory for Sony as Toshiba announces they've essentially conceded in the format war, ceasing production of HD DVD. This wasn't necessarily a loss to Microsoft, given the HD DVD platform was purely an add-on device to the Xbox 360. But Sony, however, had a lot riding on it in that they had a hand in the creation and development of Blu-ray, with every PlayStation 3 shipping with a Blu-ray drive for games and movie playback. And while the benefits weren't immediately obvious in 2008, the victory meant a long-term win for Sony with residual revenue. But more so for the PS3, Blu-rays could hold more storage than a traditional DVD, and thus more content could fit into one disc. This was just the beginning of what would be a solid year for Sony in slowly molding the PS3 into a product people wanted to buy and use. The platform holder started to deliver major firmware updates, giving highly requested features to users. In-game cross-media bar finally allowed PS3 users to access their messages and friends list while they were playing a game. Sony adopted Microsoft's achievement-based system with the inclusion of trophies, and they relaunched the PlayStation Store with a much cleaner and user-friendly interface. Sony's marketing also improved noticeably with commercials that seemed to actually make sense. And if that wasn't enough, June 12th delivered one of the PS3's most important exclusives. Metal Gear Solid 4 saw critical acclaim, and Sony saw a pretty substantial increase in PS3 sales across all markets, which the company desperately needed, because by June 23rd, it was revealed in financial reports that pricing PS3 below manufacturing costs made the company lose over $3 billion. Sony quoted to investors, "The large-scale investments required during the development and introductory period of a new gaming platform may not be fully recovered." Basically, it was going to take a lot to ever see a return on PlayStation 3. And in July, E3 2008 is where the company held a show heavily focused on promising exclusives. Infamous, Killzone 2, MAG, God of War 3, and more were shown off. All the while still juggling PSP and PS2 into the mix as well. Though one of the biggest surprises at E3 was at Microsoft's show.
One more big announcement to share. Take a look at this movie.
What was once considered a PlayStation exclusive is now no more. The gaming landscape was in utter shock that a mainline Final Fantasy would now release day and date on Xbox alongside PlayStation. For many, this was seen as a nail in the coffin for Sony. If PS3 can't keep games like Final Fantasy or Devil May Cry exclusive, why would anybody need to buy one? Little did anyone know that this would pretty much be the norm moving forward, as third-party exclusives slowly but surely became a thing of the past. By year's end, Resistance 2 and Little Big Planet released, and more stellar titles that many enjoyed. PlayStation Home also saw an open beta release, which looked promising on the surface. 2008 seemed to be a mostly good year to the PS3, and yet the sales weren't enough. The grass was indeed much greener on the other side. Microsoft saw great numbers all throughout the year. It was either good hardware sales, a good attach rate, or an increase in Xbox Live subscriptions. Most major third-party releases were playing better on 360 and selling better too. Microsoft had the distinct advantage in just having an all-around better platform when factoring everything in. A gold subscription was keeping gamers grouped together, and Xbox Live was simply a more robust place to play games anyway, with cross-game chat and a native party system. When a major blockbuster release like Grand Theft Auto 4 or Fallout 3 would hit, 360 was the place to play it for many. And it wasn't just the third-party preference, as 2008 also saw Ninja Gaiden 2, Fable 2, and Gears of War 2. Xbox Live Arcade also continued to be a preferential storefront for many smaller independent developers, with games like Braid and Castle Crashers releasing. And while Sony is releasing features that play catch-up, Microsoft is completely revamping the UI with the new Xbox Experience, which came out later in the year. A completely new interface that presented the menus and games in a more modern fashion, with an emphasis on tiles and imagery. And Microsoft's new Me-like avatars added a little flavor to user profiles. All in all, Microsoft had a great 2008. And while Sony made good strides in rebuilding the PS3 image, it wasn't going to catch Xbox anytime soon. By year's end, 360 sold 28 million units worldwide. PS3 was in the neighborhood of 21 million. Down, but not out.
People are not asking the right questions. They're not asking the right questions because they kind of think they already know the answers.
Things were now heating up. 2009 was the year both companies started to really prepare for their future, as their machines get to a comfortably low price point for many potential customers to now buy in. Sony opened the year with Killzone 2 and Demon's Souls, and much to everyone's surprise, Killzone 2 actually lived up to most of its high expectations. Demon's Souls was also an unexpected surprise to many as well. And as the year progressed, games like Infamous and Ratchet & Clank: A Crack in Time also saw a great reception. It was finally getting to a point where you could say the PS3 had a great library, and in large part many of those games were only available on PS3. And it's at this point that many developers are not only getting more comfortable developing on PS3, but more smaller studios are working on the platform as well. The PlayStation Store was now seeing a greater influx of games released, either ports from Xbox Live Arcade or day-and-date releases with the competing storefront. E3, however, was bigger than ever, as this was the year both Sony and Microsoft revealed major expansions to their hardware. Sony officially unveiled PlayStation Move, which at the time were only referred to as PlayStation Motion Controllers. They demonstrated the tech's impressive one-to-one capabilities and made a case for how it could be applied to games for the future. The peripheral was slated to be released the following year.
You can imagine if he could be Ratchet and he could hold Ratchet's weapons in his hand while he played. He would die for that.
Microsoft revealed Project Natal, a camera sensor with the promise of making you the controller and interacting with your body and voice. There were multiple demos shown for this as well, demonstrating how the device could be used in games and Xbox avatars. Peter Molyneux also showed off what appeared to be a highly advanced AI utilizing the camera as well, though this was met with extreme skepticism and later never came to fruition.
Hi Milo, how you doing? Hi Claire, you okay? Actually, I'm a bit nervous.
You? Nervous? I don't believe it.
Just as E3 came and went, fall showed up with more business from Sony. Arguably one of the biggest turning points for PS3 was Gamescom 2009, where much like Sony always does with their hardware, it was time for a revision. The rumored console and price cut were official. A slimmer PlayStation 3 would be hitting the market at a much more affordable $299 price tag. Not only this, but Sony even went as far to rebrand the system in a small but substantial way. The font would revert back to the more traditional PS1 and PS2 style, and Sony would start a very successful ad campaign that caught the attention of many. The timing went well with PS3's biggest 2009 release that was only a few months away. This was the momentum finally needed for the PS3 to gain a little bit of traction. Sony rounded out the year with a new price, console, and bright future with more exclusives announced and waiting for 2010. Microsoft spent a good portion of 2009 more in prep mode. Forza 3 and Halo 3 ODST kept fans quenched in the interim, while Microsoft readies a dramatically new approach to games with Project Natal and upcoming exclusives like Halo Reach, Alan Wake, Fable 3, and Crackdown 2. And while 2009 still saw total sales domination from the Wii, that didn't keep most gamers from spending their entire holidays playing Modern Warfare 2. In the end, Sony finally reached a profit after major restructuring and layoffs, and reached 33.5 million PS3 sales. Microsoft would not give updated figures until April 2010 to coincide with the platform reaching 40 million units sold.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your new Xbox 360. Completely redesigned for the future of entertainment.
Sony opened 2010 strong with major releases like MAG, Heavy Rain, God of War, and the announcements of Little Big Planet 2 and Killzone 3. The new marketing campaign featuring fake Sony executive Kevin Butler also seemed to be performing well and was starting to paint PS3 in a positive eye. It was at this point where PS3 not only gained serious momentum in sales, but overall public image of finally being a desirable, affordable, and fun gaming console. Microsoft, on the flip side, also saw a strong opening with then-exclusive Mass Effect 2, which wouldn't make a PS3 debut until the following year. Not all was well with Sony, however. On April 1st, the company removed the Other OS feature from PS3 via a firmware update. The Other OS feature was a way for consumers to install operating systems like Linux onto the PS3, and this was initially advertised as a feature of the PS3. Many fans found this to be very insidious and anti-consumer, and Sony was met with a lawsuit that would later settle in 2017. But a little bit after that, Sony launched PlayStation Plus, a monthly subscription service that would give out free games. At the time, it was met with skepticism, but this was Sony's way of luring users to pay monthly on PS3 for something that actually gives back, instead of Xbox Live, which simply required a fee for online play. This later turned into a big success, as Microsoft later adopted this strategy in 2013, doing games with gold. Come E3 2010, the general air in the video game industry is a bit different. Both Sony and Microsoft are now committed to showing the world more of their chosen motion-controlled peripherals. Sony spent half an hour or so demoing PlayStation Move, which turned out to be slightly awkward and uninteresting. But the rest of the show was filled with pleasant surprises. Kevin Butler stole the show for a bit and made a cheesy speech.
I love drifting a turn at 100 miles an hour in boss battles with a 600-foot-tall Greek god who may or may not be your father. Gaming is having a ridiculously huge TV in a tiny one-room apartment.
Gabe Newell surprised everybody by making an appearance and vowing Portal 2 will be best on PS3.
Now, I've been pretty outspoken in my comments about the current generation of game consoles. And I think that gamers will be delighted with features like Steam Cloud and automatic updates that will make the PlayStation 3 version of Portal 2 the best version on any console.
And Sony went a little over the top announcing Twisted Metal. Microsoft showed great footage of their upcoming games, but also spent a large portion of their conference demoing the Kinect sensor, which understandably frustrates your typical gamer that would want to watch E3, but pleases investors who want to see potentially high-selling products. Microsoft's Don Mattrick closed out the show revealing the Xbox 360S, a slimmer and more efficient Xbox 360 that would be available immediately. And in the following months, both motion peripherals launched and initially sold very well, except Microsoft did exceptionally well. Just when it seemed like Sony was making decent headway into Xbox 360 sales, Microsoft reinvigorates the platform with a new form factor and family-friendly games that use a new impressive camera sensor. The marketing and games were a complete success, and Kinect became the fastest-selling consumer electronic device. And with holiday releases like Halo Reach, Fable 3, and Call of Duty Black Ops, core Xbox 360 gamers were pleased for the time being. Sony ended the year announcing Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception in December. Sales figures tell an interesting story. PS3 was now around 48 million units worldwide. 360 was at about 51 million. The sales gap Microsoft had was indeed shrinking.
Sony's PlayStation Network, and now your credit card info could be at risk. The online network has been down since last Wednesday. Sony just announced yesterday.
2011 was once again a promising year for Sony to make a move on Microsoft, but a major snag came up. On April 20th, Sony acknowledged that PSN was having issues and that some services were down. Shortly after, the company confirmed that there was an intrusion on the network and that service would continue to stay down for a few days while they investigate what
That
exactly
shit turned
happened.
into like a month
On
or something.
April 25th, Sony announced that the time needed to fix and rebuild the network would be longer than expected. All the while, many customers were curious as to what exactly was accessed on the network, with Sony not openly admitting much else besides the third-party intrusion. It only took another day for Sony to confirm suspicions that personal data may have been compromised. The week after, local government agencies in many countries got involved, questioning the severity of the breach with Sony directly. On May 1st, Sony confirmed that there would be a welcome-back compensation package to customers as a means of goodwill, though this was still announced rather early as the network still was not ready to be opened again. There was also an additional attack on Sony Online Entertainment, which held back the restoration of services. The outage was officially over after 23 days, with PSN slowly returning on May 14th. Sony offered free games and themes back to returning users and a $1 million credit card insurance policy good for 1 year. The company was hit with a lawsuit and fined £250,000 British pounds under British law. Sony says the breach cost them $171 million. This didn't just cost money, but public image. What was considered one of the biggest data breaches ever is now hindering the sales momentum the PS3 had going. Meanwhile, Microsoft is seeing incredible sales numbers for Xbox 360, and more specifically its Kinect sensor, which is why a big portion of their E3 show in 2011 was once again heavily focused on Kinect demonstrations. But many gamers and Microsoft's core audience was starting to recognize that most of the company's efforts were now focused on only casual games, and the remaining exclusives were just more Halo, Gears of War, and Forza. This is when a slight shift began with Microsoft's fanbase, in which many felt the company wasn't focusing enough on what gamers really wanted. Despite these concerns or any debates that would happen on the internet, Microsoft pressed forward with Kinect-focused games, while Sony ended up releasing Uncharted 3, Infamous 2, Resistance 3, and a myriad of other exclusives that seemed to be releasing on a bi-weekly basis, whether they were bigger titles or more niche. By November 2011, the sales gap was now less than 2 million units. PS3 was at 56 million, 360 was at 57.6 million. With the PSN breach behind, 2012 was more or less a similar story in that Sony continued a consistent release of exclusive games, and Microsoft insisted on more Kinect. And while Sony did have an agenda as well in pushing
We have dogs, hair gets everywhere. The fact that I don't have to clean the brush roll is huge for me.
PlayStation Move sales and software, it ultimately didn't pay off nearly as well as Kinect did for Microsoft. By March 2012, Sony's Fergal Gara openly admitted that the hardware had not lived up to their expectations. PlayStation Move fell into obscurity at this point and wouldn't be made relevant again until its use in PlayStation VR years later. E3 2012 was the point in which Microsoft began to see serious backlash. They spent a large portion of their E3 conference showing third-party games, Kinect, and TV and video services. Games like Halo and Forza were not cutting it anymore for Microsoft's core audience. Sony's E3 showcased a few exclusives and spent a portion of the show focusing on PlayStation Vita, but they closed strong with extended footage of The Last of Us, a game which by release in 2013 went on to make an incredible impact on the industry standard. And during TGS 2012, Sony announced a further revision of the PlayStation 3 with more gigabytes and a lower price. January 2013 was the month Sony had been working towards for more than 6 years. It was being reported that PS3 shipments have now surpassed 360. And while units shipped did not necessarily mean units sold, this was the point in which Sony was now about to outsell Xbox 360. And once May rolled around, it was reported as official. PS3 lifetime sales passed Xbox 360. Both machines were at 77 million units, with PS3 a few thousand higher. And with that news came the conferences that would bring the announcement of next-generation hardware from both Sony and Microsoft. The world was now learning about PS4 in February and Xbox One in May. With all eyes pointing towards next-gen, PS3 and 360 started to cool down slightly. Microsoft revealed the Xbox 360e at E3, and Sony released The Last of Us in June. On April 20th, 2016, Microsoft officially ended manufacturing of new Xbox 360s, and Sony slowly ceased PS3 shipments by territory, with Japan being the last one, ending May 29th, 2017. When everything was all said and done, with updated numbers, PS3 sits at roughly 86.9 million units, while 360 sits at 85.8.
Alright, I'm out of here.